Canto 3, Chapter 5, text number 49. Yavad palim teja haramakale yathavayam chanam adama yatra yato bhayesham ta imehi loka palim haranto num Balim haranto nam adatyanoha Yavad balim teja ramakale Yatavayam chanam adamayatra Yato bhayesham ta imehi lokam Balim haranto nam adatyanoha Yavad palim teja haramakale Yatavayam chanam adamayatra Yato bhayesham ta imehi loka Balim haranto nam adantya anha. Ladies? Yavat balim teja haramakale Yatavayam chanam adamayatra Yato bhayam yesham itam Balim haranto nam adanchanoha Yavad balim teja haramakale Yatavayam chanam adamayatra Yato bhayesham ta imehi loka Balim haranto nam adanchanuha Yavat as it may be Balim offerings Te your Aja oh unborn one Harama shall offer Kale at the right time Yata as much as Vayam we Cha also Anam food grains Adama shall partake Yatra whereupon Yata as much as Ubayesham both for you and for us Te all Ime these He certainly Lokaha living entities Balim offerings Arantaha while offering Anam grains Adanti eat Anuha without disturbance translation, O unborn one, please, can you fix the ring back? There's ring back in this system. Please enlighten us regarding the ways and means by which we can offer you all enjoyable grains and commodities so that both we and all other living entities in this world can maintain ourselves without disturbance and can easily accumulate the necessities of life both for you and for ourselves. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Developed consciousness begins from the human form of life and further increases in the forms of the demigods living in higher planets. The earth is situated almost in the middle of the universe, and the human form of life is the via medium between the life of the demigods and that of the demons. The planetary systems above the earth are especially meant for the higher intellectuals called demigods. They are called demigods because although their standard of life is far more advanced in culture, enjoyment, luxury, beauty, education, and duration of life, they are always fully Krishna conscious. Such demigods are always ready to render service to the Supreme Lord because they are perfectly aware of the fact that every living entity is constitutionally an eternal, subordinate servitor of the Lord. They also know that it is the Lord only who can maintain all living entities with all the necessities of life. The Vedic hymn, Eko bahunam yo vidadati kaman, ta enam abhruvan, ayutanam na pranahi, prajanihi, yasmin pratishta anam adame, etc., confirms this truth. In Bhagavad Gita also the Lord is mentioned as the Bhuta Brit, or the maintainer of all living creatures. Paragraph. The modern theory that starvation is due to an increase in population is not accepted by the demigods or the devotees of the Lord. The devotees or demigods are fully aware the Lord can maintain any number of living entities provided they are conscious of how to eat. If they want to eat like ordinary animals who have no God consciousness, then they must live in starvation, poverty, and want. Like the jungle animals in the forest, the jungle animals are also maintained by the Lord with their respective foodstuffs, but they are not advanced in God consciousness. Similarly, human beings are provided with food, grain, vegetables, fruits, and milk by the grace of the Lord, but it is the duty of human beings to acknowledge the mercy of the Lord. As a matter of gratitude, they should feel obliged to the Lord for their supply of foodstuff, and they must first offer him food in sacrifice and then partake of the remnants. Paragraph. In Bhagavad Gita 3:13, it is confirmed that one who takes foodstuff after a performance of sacrifice eats real food for proper maintenance of the body and soul, but one who cooks for himself and does not perform any sacrifice eats only lumps of sin in the shape of foodstuffs. Such sinful eating can never make one happy or free from scarcity. Famine is not due to an increase in population, as less intelligent economists think. When human society is grateful to the Lord for all his gifts for the maintenance of the living entities, then there is certainly no scarcity or want in society. But when men who are unaware of the intrinsic value of such gifts from the Lord, surely they are in want. A person who has no God consciousness may live in opulence for the time being due to his past virtuous acts, but if one forgets his relationship with the Lord, certainly he must await the stage of starvation by the laws of the powerful material nature. One cannot escape the vigilance of the powerful material nature unless he leads a God-conscious or devotional life. Powerful Acharya, our founder Acharya, ready to take on anyone and be firm about it. Now, his business is not, there's a teaching within Vedic texts where it's ill-advised to simply be interested in understanding something so that you can defeat others. Patandi, I believe it's called, where you just want to win an argument, so you prepare yourself and get on your boxing gloves and bash, so that you, at the end, people applaud you and the other person's lying on the mat saying, I've been defeated. That's not the purpose. So why is he doing it if that's not the purpose? The purpose is to clear our way of misconceptions, because misconceptions are abundant in the way of life. Misconceptions are abundant and the way of life. To address misconceptions, thus permitting, it's like letting go of something you're holding on tightly so that you can take something else in your hand. Some of you are parents and you have children, and your children may want something and grab that something that's not good and try to take that something, and you have a crying child or something. So how to help them let go of that other something and to take something better. That's the purpose. It's parenting, or it's the spiritual father helping the dependent student or disciple understand misconceptions and the wholesome outcome of those misconceptions. Some of you are, I'm sure, familiar with the chapter in Canto 10, Srimad Bhagavatam, where the Govardhan Lila is described. And there's many layers and features to the Govardhan Lila. A big one is Krishna recognized that Indra was proud. And Krishna doesn't like his devotee, Indra or us or anybody, to be proud. But sometimes pride enters the heart. And when the pride enters the heart, Krishna's kindness is to create a circumstance where that pride is relieved. I'm dealing with a few circumstances of late where Krishna is doing like that, helping somebody become relieved of this thing in the heart called pride. And the person doesn't get it. It's exactly according to the topic that we discussed, blaming, there, that one, the other one, arising from pride. And reading Shikshastika 3 just doesn't work for that person. Or reading Bhagavad Gita, amanit vamadam, doesn't work for that person being It's exactly our topic yesterday. We think we're right, because otherwise we'd have another opinion, but we think we're right. Our perception, our evaluation of things we perceive tells us we're right, and we're stuck. That's being covered. So, in the Govardhan Lila, Krishna, one of the major features of the Govardhan Leela is Krishna wants to relieve Indra of pride. So he makes a plan to relieve Indra of pride. And in the course of his plan, he does something really interesting. What's that really interesting thing? His really interesting thing is he teaches atheistic philosophy to his father. What? Like a question was given after the class yesterday when one of the participants, a young girl, wanted to know why Krishna is the omniscient Supreme Lord. Why did he call upon Uddhava to give him advice? He doesn't need advice from anybody. Krishna doesn't need anything from any of us. Why patram pushpam palam toyam? He doesn't need anything from us. Why is he asking for a leaf? His service. So, to teach his father that Indra Yagya isn't necessary, he speaks karma mimamsa philosophy, which is an atheistic philosophy. Now, in karma mimamsa, it's connected to this morning's class, don't worry. In karma mimamsa philosophy, there is acknowledgement of the Vedas, and in the acknowledgement of the Vedas, there's acknowledgement of those who supply necessities, just like the necessities of life are supplied. Eko bahunam yo vedadati kaman. The necessities of life are supplied. However, karma mimamsa philosophy says you don't have to go flatter the person who supplies. Prabhupada's explanation. You don't have to go flatter the Con Edison person in charge. Just pay your bill. You get your electricity. You have to go flatter the waterworks department guy. You just pay your bill. You're entitled. So karma mimamsa philosophy says, yeah, there's somebody upstairs. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just do good work. And, that's your dharma. You don't need somebody. Just do good work. It's atheistic. Now, the demigods, they're not espousing karma mimamsa philosophy, but Krishna was. It was very clever. You don't need to worship Indra. Just do good work, and he's obliged. The laws of karma bind him. Yes, he supplies rain, yes. Just do good work, and so you don't have to worship Indra. So the connection here to this verse is, these are demigods. Now let's remember from yesterday, these are prototype demigods. What does that mean? Before there's the universe, there's prototype persons who then expand themselves within the universe to control the universe, but there's no universe yet. They're non-conglomerating, they're not cooperating yet. So there's nothing to be controllers of. And yet, in the verse, twice, it's speaking of Anna. So how can you have grains when you don't have a universe? It's an understanding of a principle of sacrifice. So there's nothing wrong. We'll say it better. It's right to honor those who supply. It's called gratitude. And it's not gratitude is wrong. Gratitude is right. But it's insufficient. Gratitude is, it's Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Mode of goodness is good, but it's insufficient. Gratitude is a characteristic of the mode of goodness. Supposing you're ungrateful. Ooh. I just had some exchange with Irmala yesterday. Maybe some of you remember. Maybe some of you weren't there. I spoke something about gratitude at the 50th celebration, and Irmila spoke something about the distinction between gratitude and the lack of gratitude. And she made reference to Pancha Tantra. So I was unaware of that reference, so we had some exchange. I found the reference. In the Pancha means 5, Tantra, so it's children's stories, kind of, teaching lessons of life. And one of the 5 is the ungrateful man. It's a lesson. I'll come back to this morning's verse, but gratitude is expressing, it's thank you. Parents teach their kids, when you receive something, what do you say? And they go, thank you. Like, tilting a little duck, and the little duck makes a sound, thank you. So the expression and the feeling are different. And then bhakti is even beyond the feeling. So how to teach bhakti? That's a good question. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smarnam, etc. Bhakti begins with the process of hearing from one who's carrying bhakti, and that sound from one who's carrying bhakti helps to awaken that which is inherent in the jiva, so that the covering is removed and that which is innate within the soul becomes revived. The bhakti is already there, and it's revived through bhakti sound, or sound coming from one who's carrying bhakti, like Srimad Bhagavatam, like, hearing Bhagavatam class. So here's the demigods. On the one hand, they want. So they're not in the Shuddha Bhakti platform. They're in the I want. But they also have a service to do, which they're aware of their service. And their service was to cooperate with one another to help what the Lord wants. He wants to create the universe. So they're manifest to help him create the universe. And they're wanting the resources for sacrifice, for expressing gratitude. Grains and other paraphernalia, Prabhupada's translation here is commodities, grains, etc. There's no universe yet. But they recognize where the train is going, and so they want the Lord to kindly intervene in their non-cooperation program, and to help them get to the place where there are means to maintain themselves and others, and to satisfy the Supreme Lord, who doesn't need grains, but it's the expression of gratitude. So making offerings is just fine. But what should be the consciousness behind gratitude? The teaching is, the Bhagavatam's teaching is bhakti. We don't cancel out gratitude, but it's not everything either. Mode of goodness is not everything. So what's the everything? It's bhakti. So how to cultivate bhakti? So this is this little segment of Canto 3, Chapter 5, is teaching the demigods. They want the Lord's intervention to assist them in their service, because on their own they're not getting it together sufficiently to do their service. So they need their Lord's intervention. And he's, coming up. That's next chapter. He intervenes. And there's details and details of how that intervention comes. I'll just share, because we discussed it Wednesday evening with the Chinese devotees, I'll mention it again. Some of you attended that seminar, some of you weren't around, that's okay. Mahavishnu he does his thing. He glances, Shambhu comes, and so the elements start to differentiate. Living entities are within the field of Prakriti, It's starting to manifest in differentiated forms of the 24 elements. The demigods are there to put the elements together to make life, for the living entities, to fulfill their desire and their karma. And it's not happening. Everything of necessity is there except one thing, the intervention of the Supreme Lord. So what happens, if you remember, this is from Wednesday evening, Mahavishnu, because he started it all. He wanted. Now, why did he want? Because he's doing service. Vishnu does service to Krishna. What does Krishna want? It comes back to he's the cause of all causes. But Vishnu is the intermediate. He's the Kala, or Kala. He wants to give happiness to the living entities. And so the demigods are the prototype demigods are appealing to him. And so he manifests Vishnu from Mahavishnu, he manifests Vishnu from his brow. There's no universe yet. So there's not Garbhodakshay Vishnu yet, because there's no universe to enter into. There's no shells, so it's Karnadakshay Vishnu, Shiradakshay Vishnu, it's Paramatma. That form of Vishnu manifests from his brow. And then his right arm and left arm manifests Hiranyagarbha Brahma and a form of Lord Shiva. So the next chapter is Vishnu enters the picture. It's just the unfolding of creation in slow motion, with the personalities who are taking responsibility for that creation. Brahma hasn't appeared yet. There's no Garbhodakshay Vishnu. There's no Brahma of the universe. This is a different Brahma, etc., etc. So it's the depiction is consistent. Minimally, the depiction between Brahma Samhita and Srimad Bhagavatam. What we're hearing in Srimad Bhagavatam is in capsule form in Brahma Samhita, and then you expand Brahma Samhita and it becomes Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted Brahma Samhita as transcendental literature, written by or spoken by or provided for us by Lord Brahma, who knows, he got it right. It's perfectly consistent with the Bhagavatam. So back to this principle of gratitude. They recognize they have a service, and to do the service, they're dependent. And so they're expressing their dependence upon the Supreme Lord to do their service. And part of their service coming up is to provide the necessities for all living beings. Now, ultimately, it's the Supreme Lord, Eko Bahunam Yovidadati Kama, but he does through servants. But those servants are like Indra supplying the rain. He can't supply the rain if he isn't empowered to supply rain. And we can't do anything without the empowerment to do something. In service or not in service. Supposing somebody's not a devotee, they can't get the empowerment to do anything. The power is taken away, they can't do anything. They're not acknowledging the power, they're not acknowledging with gratitude, saying thank you. And then bhakti is to teach us more than thank you. Bhakti is to teach. So we have some service, each one of us, eternally some relationship of service, and it's meant to be awakened by what it said 2 verses ago, just by hearing of the glories of the Supreme Lord. It's pretty magical. But sound vibration does the trick. It removes the covering and awakens that which is there. So now there's 3 nice paragraphs that go along with this. And Prabhupada is focusing on developed consciousness of a human being and developed consciousness of the demigods. And the developed consciousness is bhakti. And the potential is there. And the demigods are way up there. They're not perfected beings, but they're very elevated. They recognize their service to the Supreme Lord, their dependence. They're not independent. They're recognizing their dependence upon the Supreme Lord, and they want to do their service, and they have their own interest, and they have the interest of others, their magnanimous personalities, and ultimately they have the interest of the Supreme Lord. So acts of sacrifice can have different purposes or intentions behind. That was Krishna's argument with his father, with Govardhan Puja. You have to worship Indra. Just do good work. So in addition to do good work, we should not just worship Indra, but you worship the personality of Godhead, and everything is supplied. No extraneous endeavor. Doesn't mean we become lazy, but ultimately the recognition is everything is supplied. So Prabhupada is discussing the position of the demigods as they have elevated consciousness. Beyond that of the persons of this Bhumandala plane, they're in a higher plane of consciousness. And therefore, in that higher plane of consciousness, they have more resources, beauty and wealth and knowledge and more resources, because they can handle the resources, because they have more elevated consciousness. Then 2 paragraphs deals with starvation. This is his, dealing with the misconception. Economists, the misconception, food shortage has to do with overpopulation. Therefore, curb the population. Therefore, contraception and abortion, please. Not like control the census. Please don't ask your population to control their census. Just control the population, so we won't have food shortage. It's a wrong theory. That's what Prabhupada is doing. So what's the replacement for the wrong theory? It's the Supreme Lord can supply everything for everybody in abundance. But if there isn't abundance, what's the reason behind there isn't abundance? It's not just they didn't worship Indra. Their hearts are closed to their relationship with the personality of Godhead. Therefore, the solution is open the hearts of people to their relationship with the personality of Godhead. It's a theme in his teachings. Anyone that's listened to his recorded lectures, how many times has Prabhupada say, United Nations is a waste of time? It's not a waste of time, 100% waste of time, but it doesn't unite nations. Without God consciousness, it's not going to be successful. Or say it the other way, it can be successful if God consciousness awakened. So that was Prabhupada's gift to the world. Trying, mission impossible, trying to create God consciousness in a world that's in body consciousness, or completely in the grip of false ego. I and mine, us and them, groupism, and stuff that happens even in devotee communities, groupism, this kind, that kind. And it's an obstacle. It's an obstacle to the purpose of Krishna Bhakti. And it's there. And what are you going to do about it? You promote God consciousness. And part of what Prabhupada is doing here is he's addressing the misconception that food shortage or starvation has to do with overpopulation. So there's a misconception. It's a poor spiritual conception. Groupism is a poor spiritual conception. So how do you deal with it? Point it out, and then encourage beyond what's beyond unity and diversity. Acknowledge diversity, that's fine. And acknowledge unity, please. That's a challenge. It's especially a challenge for persons that are mixed, bhakti is there, and then there's something else besides bhakti that's there, and there's a mix. This non-cooperation principle that's being described right here in this chapter. We need the intervention of the personality of Godhead. And part of that is speaking the message of unity while honoring diversity. And then there's many things to say about the application of that principle. For example, this and that and the other thing. But when the principle is understood, the application becomes easier. If the principle isn't understood, diversity will go on without the unity. As the Hare Krishna movement grows, there's going to be diversity, which is good. As the Hare Krishna movement grows, strong emphasis on unity in diversity is essential, or you could say maturity of bhakti, because otherwise it's going to be groupism and conflict, growing and growing and growing, and strife. And some persons come and see the strife and they go, whoa, I saw that outside, I don't need this. It's not encouraging. Or say it the other way. If the person who's coming, new person, come and sees, look at these people are so diverse. And they get along so well with one another. It's like, I want to be part of this. They may not know what the essence of Krishna Bhakti is, but they're attracted by what they can perceive. So we have a responsibility for the mission and for our own spiritual evolution is to go beyond the limitations of the mix and identifying strongly with the diversity, the particular brand of diversity, and looking over to see the other brand of diversity with judgmentalism and separatism, and because it's right here in this section. Let's see if there's some discussion. Yes.
There was a lot in that verse and your class. I have 2 questions, Maharaj.
Okay.
And a question that has been I've been mulling over the last few days is, I'll get to the question, but my appreciation of the demigods, in this case, the prototype demigods, is that despite not being able to cooperate, they were honest about it, and they approached the Lord for intervention. And I was thinking about other situations in the Bhagavatam where Prithu, great personality, Indra, great personality, fighting in the 4th canto for the horse, and the intervention of Brahma and then Vishnu to help the Vaishnavas have good relationships. Similarly, 8th canto with the milk ocean, churning of the milk ocean, not the Daityas, not necessarily devotees, but repeatedly in the churning of the milk ocean, there's intervention of the Supreme. My question is, the one that I've been mulling over is, what prevents us, and those who have perhaps even in leadership positions, with perhaps some Ishwar Bhav, what prevents us from receiving and asking for this intervention because it's so needed, even though these demigods are super elevated relative to where we are? They're asking for that intervention, yet at our level, we struggle to request for intervention.
Our dear friend, false ego, who does his thing and it manifests in speech and the mind and behaviors, and that's the block. Or saying the same thing in a different way is the lack of humility. Or saying the same thing in a different way, the concept of doership. I can do it. Or saying the same thing in a different way, I and mine. It's just part of the territory, different ways of describing the territory, but behind it all is our dear friend, who we identify with. That false ego, that's me. It separates us from calling. Next, you had 2 questions.
Yeah, Maharaj. I've heard this a few times from you. You had made a trip to Alacha one time and spoke on the 8th chapter of the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, where after Nrsimhadev kills Hiranyakashipu, the demigods offer prayers. And you made a contrast that apparently got some traction with the devotees there, that the demigod's prayers versus Prahlad's prayers in chapter 9, there's some difference, because one, the Lord was pacified by Prahlad's prayers, that was pure prayers of pure devotion, versus demigod's prayers were prayers of mixed devotion. My question is, as we're studying the Bhagavatam, and in this section we're reading the prayers of the prototype demigods, and the fact that they are unable to cooperate indicates some degree of mixed devotion. As we read the Bhagavatam, should we try to be discerning of which prayers we hold at high regard, and therefore try as our best to imbibe those, versus perhaps keeping some other prayers, taking them with a grain of salt?
No. What is meant, what we should want to receive is further clarification on Shuddha Bhakti versus Mishra Bhakti. But, Bhakti is prevalent, so it doesn't take the same stature. But let's say, if you took the conclusion that you just expressed, we just read the 10th canto when Krishna is in Vrindavan, and we don't, with a grain of salt, we take the rest of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's not advised. The opposite is advised. To really appreciate the 10th canto, we require all the others. Anything else?
I have an appreciation to offer, Guru Maharaj. The word that Srila Prabhupada used in the translation and purport yesterday, concertedly, really resonated with me, and it's stayed with me since. And I looked up its etymology, and it does come from the whole concept of concert. And sometimes you describe how different instruments, the bass and the oboe, play in a concert when there is this single-mindedness of purpose that was being described in the previous purport.
Very good.
Versus the cacophony that results from the scarcity mentality that is being described in this purport.
Yes.
And here specifically, it's being described in terms of scarcity of food grains. But I was also thinking of the scarcity mentality of not being able to see other
Not being able to?
Not being able to see other people's needs as important as our own.
Yes.
Which results in that cacophony that you were talking about, my blaming others, or, my way is the most important. And it really starts on the micro level, right? So within the family, when we cannot practice that muscle of seeing how everybody has needs and they're as important, we also cannot, at the level of our community, practice unity and diversity. So I just wanted to offer an appreciation for what Bir Krishna Maharaj has given us in terms of this incredible roadmap that is extremely practical to really bring unity and diversity into practice.
It's Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yes.
It's our life and soul. It nourishes and cleanses. It's our life and soul. So that was an appreciation. Something else? Anyone else? Yes?
Guru Maharaj, the Govardhan Leela pastime, where Krishna speaks Karma Mimamsa philosophy. So I have found myself, when I'm telling that story to children, I'm wondering, like, I can't brush away Krishna.
You can't do what?
Krishna is speaking Karma Mimamsa
Yes,
to
he
his
is.
father.
Yes.
But when I'm speaking to children, the conundrum is, here he's saying something, but actually, we understand through Prabhupada's purpose that
Yes.
that is not to be followed.
So what's the conundrum?
It is, it's this presentation of, he's like, this as it is presentation, like he's saying something, but we're not following that. Krishna speaking Karma
Okay.
Mimamsa, but we're not
That's
following
not a
that.
conundrum. Where does Karma Mimamsa philosophy come from? It comes from the Vedas. The Vedas teach one should feel and express gratitude. The Vedas teach that. And so that's not nullified. So there's a purpose behind Krishna's giving this understanding in the Vedas, and the interpretation in the Vedas is, don't forget, not just do good work, but there's a purpose behind his teaching, just do good work. It's incomplete. He has a purpose. So Krishna has a purpose. What's the purpose? Krishna wants to curb the pride of Indra. Krishna wants to curb our pride. And it's not, just do good work. It's, we need to recognize that which is the source of everything and express ours, make that connection to the source of everything, not just do good work. So it's built within the pastime, and there's a purpose for this particular expression. It's not that we're meant to leave bhakti to the side or expressions of gratitude to the side, just do good work. He's teaching. It's actually important because the idea of worship then goes to Govardhan. Take all these ingredients and let's have a big Govardhan festival, Govardhan Puja. You as a teacher of small children have to connect the dots. The more profound message is, we don't need to worship Indra, or we don't need to simply do good work. We need to worship the Krishna. And Krishna is Govardhan Hill, and he demonstrates it. Because he appears. Hari appears and eats everything. And says, I want more. So that's the connect the dots for the children. It's the subtext. It's not the explicit text is atheism. But Krishna is, of course, not teaching atheism. He's teaching a principle. We don't go, using Prabhupada's way of saying, we don't go flatter people. We do our work, yes, and we pay our taxes or pay our dues to people to whom we're grateful. We do that. That's cultured people do that. But ultimately, there's the source of everything, and our attention goes there. That's to connect the dots. So, you just have to understand the heart of Krishna He wants to curb the pride of Indra. And he's using, a circuitous path to get there, but there's a purpose to that circuitous path. Worship the Supreme Lord. He's saying worship a hill. But Govardhan Hill is not different than Krishna. And therefore we worship Govardhan Shilas. That's not different than Krishna. And that's our bhakti teaching. Connect the dots, that's all. As a teacher, understand the dots and connect the dots. You hold their hand, and you go down the path of connecting the dots. It's simple. No conundrum at all. Anything else? Okay. You have something? Yes.
Guru Maharaj, repeatedly hearing about gratitude, it feels like gratitude is a very deep quality. It's a very deep thing. And something that I've been thinking about is gratitude versus loyalty. My understanding is that loyalty is, to some extent, it's like with an attachment, meaning I'm grateful to somebody, and then I'm attached to the externalities of that person, and then just follow the externalities. Whereas gratefulness or gratitude seems to be very heart-oriented, not just.
Let's say, introspecting, do I feel loyalty to Prabhupada? And is that a feeling? Or just a behavior? There's loyalty. It's not, I would want to reflect carefully on their two terms. There must be some distinction, there must be some overlap. What's the distinction, if any? But loyalty, fierce loyalty to our founder Acharya doesn't mean, think badly of anybody that's not at Prabhupada's feet 100%. It's not, judging others that don't have that fierce, I'm using an adjective, fierce loyalty. But there's fierce loyalty. And so gratitude is a feeling, and loyalty is also a feeling. And with the feeling comes a behavior, and a bhakti behavior. You have something? Okay.
So Maharaj, so gratitude for us, it should come from the position of bhakti. That's,
yes.
Yeah. And the position of bhakti, it depends only depending on the degree of introspection one have. And
well, there's a variety of causes or evidences, but that's one.
And in the outside world also, this feelings of gratitude is, highly glorified, because without gratitude, it's a meaningless life. So what is the difference? Gratitude expressed from the platform of bhakti versus gratitude which is...
that's on the material plane. Versus gratitude that's on the material plane. So what's the distinction between the two? The center is what the distinction is. Acknowledging, where does everything come from? That's the distinction. Unmixed versus mixed, or versus not even mixed, just a reflection. So where does the feeling of gratitude come from? It comes from our relationship with Krishna. Is it possible to feel gratitude if I'm not Krishna conscious? Of course. One can feel grateful to, I mean, that's what this Pancha Tantra story is telling, what feeling gratitude towards those from whom one has received something. It has nothing to do with bhakti. Just a value. So the distinction between the two is who's at the center. And there's the reflection, and there's the real thing. And there's a mix. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.